For a moment, I'm going to ask you all to just close your eyes and take a deep breath and think of the first things that come to your mind when I speak the following words: assertive, independent, caring, nurturing, empathetic, compassionate, decisive, powerful. Open your eyes and tell me, when I said each of these words, if you had in mind a man or a woman. We see our world in the text and context of the binary. We think that certain traits belong to certain genders. We've been told, walk like a girl, sit like a girl, talk like a girl, behave like a girl. We've also been told, as boys, don't cry like a girl. What does that do to us? What does that build in us? It builds in us the idea that certain traits are powerful, are strong, belong to a certain gender, and certain other traits are soft, are kind, and belong to another gender. My invite to all of you today is to take a moment and think of what it would give you if you could open up these boxes, step out of them, and step into what I call capacity, capability, and choice. That's what I'm going to be speaking about today. Let's unbox those futures that we have locked inside little spaces. Let's look at ideas that transcend the construct of convention that's been beaten down on us over years. Let's also look at what vision looks like beyond limits. Radical truth, radical honesty, and radical being belongs to those that are willing to break those rules. When you break the rule of the masculine and the feminine as beaten down to us over years of convention, what happens? Think for a moment as to who gave you the rule book. Who decided what was okay, what was not okay? Who decided that this was the design we had to follow? I have never fit into that design. I've always been told I'm too aggressive. I've always been told I'm bossy. I've been told I'm a bully. And for a moment, I think to myself, what if I was not those things? If only my gender were to be different, how would I be perceived? So when we break this rule book down and when we look deeper and closer, what happens is we are being conditioned to behave a certain way. We're being given propaganda to believe that the world is a certain way. There was a little visual of a girl sitting in front of a magazine open in front of her, holding her little belly, a 6-year-old, and with a scissor held to the belly. What are we building our children to grow into? That our appearance as women have to be a certain way for us to look a certain way? That zero-size figures and six-pack abs should define our being attractive? Continue on in this narrative and look at leadership models. What if ambition looked different to different genders? But it does. An ambitious man is a powerful thing. An ambitious woman is almost problematic. And that's how we perceive her. Does that have a penalty? It does. And there's a book called The Ambition Penalty, which is by Stephanie O'Connell Rodriguez, which talks about the penalties that women pay for being ambitious. I would seek for you to find that book and read that book because it delves deeper into this construct. What if all of us were equally only given half the toolkit? What if everything that was in access to us was withheld because they said, no, this is not how you should behave because you're a boy. This is not how you should behave because you're a girl. What if this false binary of this construct that we've created is what is limiting us from accessing something that I call range? What if we had the range of human emotion, human behavior, human traits, human access available to us? What would that look like? Why do we mistake style for strength? Why do we mistake what the masculine is, should not be represented and taken on and lived by the feminine? Again, I ask you to question the rule book. Instead of being used as tools, we're being told to use these specific to our genders and what belongs in this so-called approval that we are constantly seeking as a validation from the world. What is action? What is dominance? What is empathy? What is weakness? What is collaboration? What is lack of ambition? All of these meanings tend to change when you remove gender from this construct. Then they become words that are available to us to seek and find as to when we need to find them to apply them in our lives. But what do? We think, no, being protective is a masculine thing. But can you think of the most powerful protective force as being the rage or the fear of a mother who's trying to protect her children? That's protection too. But we see it from a certain lens, and that lens is flawed. We're told that men should be more assertive and less emotional. Can you think of the male loneliness epidemic that we're going through today is actually, in fact, a reason for having been told that men cannot be vulnerable and cannot be seen as being emotional? What if men were given the permission to range and access those emotions that they're holding on to and bottling up because they need to appear strong? What if we gave ourselves the permission to access whatever comes our way? The problem is in the difference. It's okay to, have this certain way of looking at the world and building it. The problem is not with the difference. The problem is the way it's been designed, and the design has the flaw. And the flaw is the fact that we internalize these narratives. When you ask women, what is the biggest thing that's stopping them from accessing leadership or higher pays or negotiation for promotion? It's not the outer world that's stopping them. It's their own internal narratives that they've absorbed so deeply that has become their reality that they now fear. Progress exists, but unfortunately, equality doesn't, right? And what is equality? Equality can be gotten through only social justice, which means we have a bowling alley where all of us go to play. Imagine if all of us got the same size of shoes. That's equality. But a bowling alley that gives you a size of a shoe that's actually relevant to your size is the one that will actually help you put it on and play the game. And that's what social justice and equity looks like. Education is not the problem at all. Opportunity is, right? There is limits that are put on us even before we step out into the world being told what we can and what we cannot prescribe to. When you look at the current pace on the Global Gender Parity Index, it's going to take us 131 years to reach actual parity, right? Pay parity, pink tax, there's a whole world of these that we don't even know. And some of us don't even know what the language of this is because we haven't been told. It's so underwritten and the undercurrent is so beautifully mesmerizing. Only 68.5% of the global gender gap has been closed so far. That means there's that much more to go. Miles to go before we sleep. Where is that first crack in the rule book? When the career starts slipping, when the promotion is that tipping point, when people decide for you. I keep saying, when we ask women questions at interviews about their family plans and their marriages, do we ask the same of the men? We don't. But then people will tell you, oh no, but it'll impact the work, it'll impact the culture. There's an entire generation of people who continue to believe that it's okay to ask these questions and that it's important. We need to break that too, because you can't penalize women on their careers and their lives and their decisions based on the fact that we are the reproductive part of the world that's continuing to grow the world. You can't be penalized on both sides. So what happens for every 100 men promoted to their first managerial role? Only 87 of women are promoted. For every child a man has, he gains 7 to 9% of her salary. For every child a woman has, she loses 4 to 7% of her salary, which means we are penalized in terms of salaries also. And these are stats and numbers don't lie. From entry level to exits, when you look at the pipeline, there's a constant leak that happens in the system. Women are 50% of entry level roles, but what happens? At the CEO level, when you see it diminishes, and world over, there's only 5% of CEOs who are women in a world of a 50-50, right? Do you know how much percentage of funding is given to women founders around the world of all the venture capital funding? And even the venture cap funders are surprised when I give them this number, 2%. Whereas, actually, women pay back loans, women build more profitable businesses. And what are we continuing to do? We're continuing to live by the rule book. There's also a lot of unseen labor, right? We talk about the unpaid workforce. the amount of the unpaid workforce that actually contributes to our economy's growth, if we added more women into the workforce, our GDP would double. Those are the kind of numbers that are sitting in front of us, right? But we don't see that. Here, women perform 2.5 to 3 times more unpaid care work than men do. You all know this, right? I have friends who take care of their in-laws, their parents, their children. They have the schedules, they are running all of this, and the load is unfair. Let's talk a little bit more. There you go, 9 to 15% of GDP is what is actually the number. Whereas the old rules that have defined how we progress through our world are also problematic because we're constantly trying to navigate the world of patriarchy and be a part of that world and not dismantle it. And the design and the structure is again flawed. What the economy loses, multiple numbers. Our pay gap is 25 to 28%, much closer home here in India. Our female rate is about 41 to 42% men versus 77 to 78%. The closing gaps could actually add a 770 billion to India's GDP of USD, and those are the numbers that we're grappling with. But why is it not so easy? Right? What happens? Because the minute women reach the mid-career level, there are two things that happen. They either drop off because they want to get married, have children, and live that life, or they choose to stay at the mid-career and say, no, I'm happy with this job. I'm happy with what I'm doing. This is good enough for me. Why is it time now to break this? Because I think it's about time we access and recognize the fact that all of us are dealing with the troubles of this binary that we've created around us. Right? So the generational roles that have been passed on to us are not relevant anymore in the world we live in. Is it radical? Yes. But it's radical because we were never taught to think otherwise. What if we took that moment to say, in this point, as a boss, I need to be more nurturing. At this juncture, as a leader, I need to be more stronger, and I can't allow that strength to be clouded by my judgment. But what happens? We try and fit in. We try and fit into those roles that have put us in these boxes and we struggle. Our gender parity in education and health is such a big question. The most unsafe space for women is their homes. Not far away, not a dark alley. The kind of gender violence that we see even today continues to perpetuate because of these very, very strongly reliant statistics that drive the world. If you watch this show called Adolescence, the most regressive age group for men in the world is between the ages of 14 to 28. So let's take a moment now and think about how we've all been described over the years. What did we accept? What did we reject? Some of the speakers here spoke about being told, you're too loud, you talk too much, you're too extra, you're too much, you're seeking attention. Why is it that we judge those and all of those parameters that are discussed based on the genders of the people that we work with, are with? The LGBTQIA population in the world is 20%. Are we continuing to look at the world as binary, or are we going to include everybody as we go along? What if the traits that we were told had their gender removed from the meanings that we make our own? What does it look like? Let's improve our gender diversity. Let's include everyone as we go along. Let's ensure that as the economics, the geopolitics, and the capitalism that we work in as a world, we're more conscious in our decisions as leaders to build that world of tomorrow. And what does this need? It needs us to be more empathetic to ourselves first, because when you change what's going on inside of you, what's going on outside of you changes. When we split the world into the binaries, we're also dealing with the problems of what this should be and what this could be, but we're never looking at what is the potential of what can be and what is that magic that we can unlock. If this sounds almost philosophical, but at the same time you're feeling a sense of rage, the rage is stemming from you not having asked these questions of yourself and breaking those shackles that held you back from doing every single thing that you could have accessed as a toolbook, as a toolkit. So with that, I take a moment to invite you to a world where we're not split on the binary, where we're continuing to look at the world as a collective conscious decision that we take to make change happen, to nurture an environment that allows people to be the full range of who they are. And in that world, we will all be seeing each other for all of ourselves and not for fragmented bits that we've dropped and allowed to fall away. In that wholeness, there's magic, there's love. And when there's love, there's growth. And in that growth is a future that we have not yet accessed. Thank you.